Hello and welcome to Moxie Bets presented by Caesars Sportsbook. Happy Friday. I'm Katie Mox. Coming up on today's show, Selection Sunday is this weekend. We'll give you some March Madness theories for building your brackets, teams on the bubble, and some trends to watch for. Plus, Kenny Bets Big joins us today to give his best picks for conference title winners from around the college hoops world. And of course, we'll round out the show as we always do with some Mox Locks. But first, we welcome in our guy, Kenny Bets Big. Kenny, how you feeling?
Not on mute anymore. I'm feeling good. I got my teeth kicked in yesterday, but that's the beauty of gambling, is it always finds a way to humble you. But the good news is we got a huge weekend of, conference tournaments. There's NBA, there's, baseball coming up. So we'll get it back.
We will definitely get it back, and because we're a crew here, so I'm including myself in your yesterday. And I will say, look, it's a big weekend for college basketball betting, and I'm not a huge college basketball bettor, so I always want to make sure that we're giving the listeners what they need. We had Stuckey from Action Network on earlier this week, giving his takes on some of these conference tournament winners. I want to make sure that we get your takes as well, get everybody all the information that they need heading in to March Madness. But first, Kenny, let's do this Mox thought. And this is a very interesting one that I have an opinion on. And I'm very curious what your opinion on this is as well. So Kyrie Irving, kind of a polarizing guy, released a video yesterday, this epic long rant on sports betting and gambling and how it has ruined the fun of basketball. This is just an excerpt from it. Gambling and sports betting has completely taken the purity and fun away from the game at times. There's a difference between a diehard fan supporting your team and loving your team versus somebody that's betting on a parlay or somebody that wants to hit. Here's my thing. Don't blame sports betting. It's not sports betting. And Kenny, as a professional gambler, people have been gambling on sports for decades. And the only difference now is social media. Social media is the actual problem because people were losing on bets all the time. They just weren't tweeting you at it. They weren't DMing you, all of those things. What social media has done is it's broken down this barrier between athletes and regular folk, or celebrities and regular folk, or even sports media people and regular folk. And they can say anything that they want to you, and they do freely. And I also think that kind of trickles into person-on-person behavior, because now you see people at games wilding out a little bit more, acting a little bit crazy, getting in the face of athletes. And I think it's because they've been doing it so long on social media that they kind of forget, and then they do it also in person. It's like, you start here, then it starts kind of, you up the ante every now and again. So for me, it's not sports betting. It's social media that is changing the landscape between the relationship of fans, bettors, whatever you want to call it, and athletes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head, honestly, because, let's rewind 10, 15 years ago, before Instagram and all these things were so popular. After a bad game, you really had no way of letting Kyrie know that you missed out on $100,000 because he missed a shot, right? So yeah, I think the social media has made it easier, and like you said, it's broken down that barrier, so we can communicate with these, celebrities and famous people that a couple of years ago was like a far out thought of even doing. But yeah, I also think the NBA players are just kind of soft, man. Like, just look at the All-Star game in general, right? Like, they started doing this new draft style where they, draft the teams. They had to change it because some guys were offended by being the last guy picked on the All-Star team. So, I think these guys got to get out of their feelings. Kyrie, if someone DMs you because they lost out on $1 million, just take it on the chin. I get those DMs all day long.
Yes. And here's the thing. It is, I see both sides of it. When you said something very poignant before, where you said that we had no way of being mad at Kyrie or telling Kyrie that we're upset that he didn't have a good game, when we had money on it. And now we do. And I can understand how that's not as fun. Okay. Because even for me, it's not fun when people are commenting and telling me how much they don't like me or that I'm wrong or whatever. It's not fun. I prefer to not know if you don't like me or if, you've lost a bet because of me or whatever it is. So I can understand when him saying that, like, yes, This has made it a little bit less fun. But I also think that people need a reality check in the sense where it's like the athletes don't care about your parlay. And I think a lot of people think that it's just funny. I don't know how mad they actually are about these losing bets, depending on, I guess, on how much money you have on it. But if you're putting a ton of money on, a parlay or on a player prop, then, you got to check why you're doing things like that, because it's definitely not a smart way to spend your money. But I see both sides of it. I can understand how social media has made things less fun because you now are, it's like open season. You know what I mean? People can just say whatever they want to you. And half the time, and you know this too, if you call them out on it or you say something back, 9 times out of 10, the people backtrack because I don't think they think that you actually read these things. I don't think they think that you'll see it. And they certainly don't think that you're going to respond to it. So there's the humanality that is kind of taken out of the equation. And that's what social media has done. And to your point too about like, yeah, you got to take it on the chin. We don't know how much hate these people are getting. And it's something with me too. I'll respond to things, whether it's a misogynistic thing, whether it's, someone that doesn't like me or whatever it is. And sometimes I respond to it. And it's very interesting to me because a lot of the responses I'll get from people are like, oh, just ignore them. Why do you give them any air? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, one, yes, but you don't know how much of this I get. I ignore it 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time. But every once in a while, I have time for it and I'll say something back. And you can kind of only take so much of it. I do think we have to kind of restructure the way that we're thinking about things and that these are also human beings and they can only take so much. So every once in a while, they are going to break and they're going to say something. But again, it's not sports betting, it's social media.
Yeah, and I think, if we look at some of these athletes like a JJ Watt, right? Like he's handled it and he's kind of turned some of these,
Yeah,
mean DMs or messages he gets and he turns it into a win for himself where, someone will
right.
hit him up, say, "Hey, I lost this bet because of you," and he'll send them the reimburse him the money for the parlay or whatever it is. And I don't expect every athlete to do that because, people are gambling. You shouldn't have to reimburse someone for their losses, but
No.
at the end of the day, I think it's a fun way that the fans can connect with these athletes in
Yeah,
a more personal level, right? Like,
right.
they feel tied to these games because they actually have something
Yes.
invested in the outcome.
Yeah. Well, and you know what, Kenny, that's exactly it. I feel like fans more, whether it's through gambling or through social media, feel more of a sense of ownership with these teams, with these athletes, with these games in particular. And that's maybe why it gets so personal. So I don't know what exactly the answer is, but I do know that it is not sports betting that is the problem. And so I will be here advocating on my soapbox for that pretty
And
much all
I
year
hate to
long.
break it to you,
But let's
Kyrie,
take
even if it was the
hate to
problem,
break it to you.
it's not going anywhere. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So get used to
Yeah,
it,
just
Kyrie.
limit your comments, my guy. Limit your comments. Don't allow people that don't know you to DM you. Protect yourself because these people are just. I will say I don't. I have an opinion about athletes. I have an opinion about games. I don't specifically tag athletes in my critiques of them. That to me is just a little bit weird. It's like, yes, you can talk about these things. You can have an opinion about things. You don't have to tell them that you don't like them. You don't have to tell them that you lost money because of them. Just also sports bettors, take it on the chin, take your loss and move on. So that's end rant for this. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching Moxie Bets. Building the perfect same game parlay can be time consuming, but with Quick Picks, the Caesar Sportsbook app does the work for you. Quick Picks are pre built same game parlays that turn today's biggest headlines, storylines, and games into bets. They're quick and easy to use, and you can't miss them. They're right on the home screen of the Caesar Sportsbook app. Give them a try, and if you haven't downloaded the app yet, register using the code OMAHAFULL and then place your first bet. If you win, congrats. If you don't, you'll get your stake up to $1,250 back as a bet credit. Welcome back to Moxie Bets, and we're going to welcome back in our guy, Mr. Kenny Betts Biggs, and we're going to talk some CBB. We have a full weekend of college hoops to be played, and many more tournament finals are still going to be decided over the weekend. We'll take a look right now of some of the bigger conference tournaments. I want to get your opinions here, starting with the ACC. Who are you liking to emerge as the winner of the ACC? And then, maybe some games, if there are any, that you're eyeing on this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't personally bet a future on the ACC tournament. I took a few of the other tournaments. The ACC was one I actually stayed away from just because there are so many question marks, right? Like around North
Yeah.
Carolina, what team North Carolina were we going to get? The preseason #1 team or the team we've watched all year? And we had that question answered yesterday. But just from watching the first few rounds, I would have to go Duke. Like I faded
Yeah.
Duke yesterday. I took Pitt. Duke just absolutely dismantled a very, very strong Pittsburgh team. They shot almost 70% from the field for the entire game. That's just unheard of. And then on the other end, they played lockdown defense. I'm sure if you're following, the conference tournaments and March Madness, the bracket watch, you've heard a lot of people say that Duke is peaking right now. Like they're hitting that peak,
Yeah.
they're hitting it at the right time. And I kind of have to agree, especially after seeing how they played Pittsburgh yesterday. So you could still get pretty good plus money on them to win the ACC. And that's probably where I'd put my money.
We're going to talk about the bubble watch a little bit later on the show, but UNC is very interesting to me because they would be actually not one of, they would be the first preseason #1 ranked team to not make the NCAA tournament. And they are very firmly on the bubble right now. So that's, again, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but it's pretty crazy. Now, what do you think about the Big East? It's over at MSG. I don't know if you've been able to go over and catch some games. There's still a lot of decisions to be decided. You got UConn versus Marquette, Creighton versus Xavier. What are you thinking?
So this one I actually had a bet on. Lost that one last night as Villanova
Okay.
came out and laid a total egg against
Oh,
Creighton.
Villanova. Yeah.
Yeah, Villanova is something else, man. They had a great experienced team. They have Cam Whitmore projected top 10 NBA draft pick. So I thought they had the pieces to make a nice run here as they were kind of putting it together down the stretch, but didn't happen. I actually had the chance to go to the UConn game when they played Villanova last week. And Katie,
Cool.
man, that UConn team is scary good. They got Sonogo,
Yeah.
the big man on the inside. He's tough to stop. But then they have so many guards that are sneaky good. They drill shots with contested shots. They hit the open shots. They play really, really good defense. So I would have to go with UConn there. I know Marquette's still alive, and that's going to be a good game today. But I think UConn gets it done.
UConn gets it done. Well, UConn has had some pretty incredible runs too in the past. That 2014 run, they were 95-1 to win the whole thing. And then, of course, with the Kemba Walker years as well. All right, so let's look at the Big Ten. You got Rutgers versus Purdue, Ohio State versus Michigan State. Izzo, one of the longest standing coaches right now in college basketball. Penn State versus Northwestern. Northwestern's been kind of a frisky team. And then you got Maryland versus Indiana. Where are you putting your money here?
I'm going with the frisky team, Katie. I actually bet,
Yeah.
yeah, I actually bet Northwestern before the tournament started to win it. I got them plus 1,100. It's pretty much the same price. I think they're plus 1,000 now, depending where you look. But yeah, I think they're a very slept on, underrated team. They have Boo Buie, senior point guard, who's an absolute game changer. He could take over the game at any point in time. They got Chase Audige, who's more than likely going to be the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. And then they got Barnhizer, who's a freshman. I think he won Mr. Basketball in high school his last year. He's really
Mr.
stepping.
Basketball.
Yeah. So that's what they call like the best high school player in the state, like Mr.
Okay.
Indiana or
Okay.
whatever it's called. So
Yeah.
that's got to be cool, right?
Really
But
cool.
he's really been stepping up down the stretch to give them a very, very legitimate third option on the offensive end. So I think they're a team that, can surprise a lot of people. They set a school record this year for most Big Ten conference wins. They closed out the season going into Rutgers and winning, which is a very, very hard place to win on the road. So I think the Northwestern team is a very sneaky team, especially at that price. I
Yeah.
don't like Purdue. A lot of people are on Purdue. I'm not a big Purdue believer. I think they're a little overrated, and they rely too much on Zach Edey. And, as I said last week, I don't really like betting on teams that are so heavily reliant on big men come tournament time.
Yeah, we had Stuckey from Action Network on earlier this week, and he kind of said similar things about Northwestern. He thinks that they're a team that's a little bit disrespected also in the odds market. So you can get some good lines on them. Definitely something I'm going to pay attention to moving forward. Now, let's take a look at the Big 12. There are actually a couple games happening today. You got Iowa State versus Kansas, TCU versus Texas. Stuckey also liking TCU to not only win this tournament, but potentially win the whole damn thing. But what are you thinking here?
Well, I hope Stucky's wrong
You're
because
not going there?
no. I hope he's actually wrong because I have Texas winning this tournament. I think
Mhm.
I bet them pre-tournament. I sent it out to all my clients. I just thought there was good value on them. I got them around plus 400 to win the Big 12 tournament. Obviously, Kansas is a tough team if they have to face Kansas in the finals. Hopefully, Iowa State can get that done. I just think, looking at TCU and this team and versus Texas today, because that's who Texas has to play later tonight. I just like the
Yeah.
matchup for Texas. They got Tyrese Hunter, the transfer from Iowa State. They got good athletic bigs inside, Disu and those guys. So I think they're a really well-rounded team. Unfortunately, they lost Chris Beard, who's one of the best college coaches. I think if they had him, they would have been even a tougher team to eliminate in these tournaments. But going forward, I still think Texas has enough pieces to get it done. They're ranked top 20 or 30 in both offensive and defensive adjusted efficiency. They're in the KenPom top 10. So, yeah, I think
Mhm.
Texas has the pieces and the players to get it done.
All right, so let's move on now to the SEC. A couple games going on today for them as well. Got Mississippi State versus Bama, Tennessee versus Missouri, Arkansas. The Razorbacks have been kind of frisky as well versus Texas A&M, and then you got Vanderbilt versus Kentucky. Who takes it?
Who takes it all? I'm on Alabama. I'm a Kentucky
Mm,
fan, but I don't
yeah,
believe in
well,
my
it's hard.
Wildcats this year.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm looking
you're
at the
not the only
favorites.
one.
No, yeah, and they're a disappointing team. Coach Cal always gets these big name players, super athletic guys, and they're just not. They just haven't put it together. I thought they would have a good year, especially with Oscar Shibwe coming back, returning for another
Hmm.
season, but they've been a little disappointing this year. I like
Yeah,
Alabama. Normally, I don't really like to bet the favorites, especially on future bets because the value's not there. But I just don't see any team in the SEC beating them. And then when you see the layout of their bracket, they just have an easier schedule to get to the finals. I don't see the game today giving them much trouble. They're 8.5-point favorites. They have Brandon Miller, who arguably is the best player in the country right now.
hmm.
I said it earlier. He won Mr. Basketball 2 years in a row in Tennessee, where he's from. Coincidentally, that's where this SEC tournament is being played. So I think Brandon Miller is going
Ooh,
to.
return of Mr. Basketball.
Yep. And I think he's going to come out, and I think he's going to put a show on for the home crowd.
Yeah, I hope so, and that's I always like a narrative angle, so really, really liking that one. Okay, let's now move west to the Mountain West. How about those San Jose State Spartans, where I'm from, versus San Diego State, Utah State versus Boise State. All right, who's gonna win the whole thing? Do my Spartans have a chance?
Is that where you went to school?
No, it's where I'm from. I'm from San Jose. I went to fashion
Okay.
school. I don't know how I ended up in sports betting media.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how I ended up here either. I was just talking to my friend
You
about
know?
that the other day.
Yeah, weren't you
This
like a physics major or some kind? You were gonna be like a scientist.
Yeah, I went to school for biochemistry. I was hopefully trying to
Yeah.
become a doctor, and then a couple car accidents later dropped out. Yeah, that's for another day. Um,
And now you're a professional gambler. Let's go, Kenny.
yeah, right. I'm not too mad about how life shook out. I'll take it.
No.
This tournament, I actually had a future bet in. It lost last night, unfortunately. Even though they played a decent game, I took New Mexico to win this. They
Mm.
ran into an absolute juggernaut last night in Utah State. New Mexico shot 50% from the field yesterday. They still lost by 15 points. Utah State just came out and was drilling threes left and right. So I would have to go with Utah State now to win it. It's kind of that feeling where you see your team lose, and now you're just kind of rooting for the team that knocked you out. And I just think a team that is, especially if they continue to shoot that way, like if you're shooting the way
Yeah.
that they were from three, like I said, New Mexico shot 50% last night and lost by 15 points. So Utah State, I think, is going to be tough to beat in the Mountain West.
Okay, the Pac-12 is very interesting. A lot of really good teams here. You got Oregon versus UCLA going on today. Arizona State versus the University of Arizona. Arizona State just beat the University of Arizona in the last regular season game. What's your take on this one?
If you had asked me this a couple days ago, like a week ago, I probably would have said UCLA. But
Yeah.
since then
Oh,
they've
yeah.
lost. Yeah, but since then they've lost Jalen Clark, who's their best defender, on-ball defender. I just think that's gonna, it's gonna cause a trickle down effect. I think, so if they have to play a team like in Arizona, I think you'll see him miss like them missing that player stand out much more. It's going to be a more notable loss for them. So I would have to go with Arizona here and the Cats. They got the two big guys inside. They got Kirk Risa, good guard play. They can drill threes. If Arizona is on and they're playing their style of basketball, they're one of the toughest teams to beat in the country.
Yeah, Arizona's been a good program too for a very, very long time. But Arizona State is actually a little bit frisky to me. Are there any other conference tournament picks that we should be keeping an eye on? Obviously we went through all the big ones, but what about maybe some of those smaller ones?
Yeah, so I also bet the Big West Conference tournament. I took UC Irvine to win that one. UC Irvine, super, super tough team on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, that conference in general is usually like more of a slow-paced defensive style type game, but I think UC Irvine has they have enough to get it done. I grabbed them at plus 200. First conference game, they won yesterday by 20 plus points. Hawaii got upset yesterday, so they get a little bit easier matchup today. I just think things are kind of breaking their way for them to go on and win it all.
Okay, well, you talked about an upset right there. Any other upsets we could be looking at this weekend?
Northwestern, it's crazy. Like Stuckey said,
Yeah,
they're the number 2 seed in the Big Ten, and I got them plus 1,100 to win it all.
that's
Now,
wild.
obviously, sometimes we say maybe the odds makers know something. Look at Ohio State. They're kind of playing really good basketball right now, and they've pulled off 2 straight upsets now in the Big Ten tournament. Can they keep that going? They're a tough team, but yeah, I just think Northwestern, they're being slept on. I don't know how they're plus 1,000 right now. It's crazy to me. They're such a good team.
All right, so Selection Sunday is coming up on Sunday, and there's been some automatic bids. There'll be some more of those, but then there's also these bubble teams. Who do you think, who's one of your favorite bubble teams that can make the big dance, and who are you worried about? I mean, maybe UNC about not making the NCAA
Yes.
tournament.
So I think the biggest winners so far are Rutgers and Penn State.
Mm,
Those were two teams that were kind of fringe, like on the bubble, maybe last 4 in, first 4 out type of teams. And both have, just secured really good wins in the Big Ten tournament. I think they're kind of solidified their spot in the NCAA tournament. I think if Rutgers can get a win today over Purdue, which they did in the regular season, that all but pretty much locks them up as a bid in the NCAA tournament. I think the biggest losers, you have to go UNC and Nevada. UNC, you talked about it, more than likely going to be the first preseason number 1 team to not make the March Madness tournament. And you look at their players, right? They got Love, RJ Davis, Baycott. They got really good players on that team. And for them to just perform the way they did throughout the whole entire season, it's pretty disappointing. And I'm sure they feel the same way. And then Nevada, if you look at this Nevada team a couple weeks ago,
mm.
they were all but a shoe-in to make the NCAA tournament. They've dropped like 3-4 straight games. They get bounced out by your San Jose State yesterday in the Mountain
Let's
West tournament.
go.
And now Nevada finds themselves as one of the first 4 out. So yeah, I think UNC and Nevada really shot themselves in the foot in these conference tournaments.
All right, so that's Selection Sunday. That's who's going to make it, maybe who's not going to make it. As we get into March Madness, and I will say very excitingly, we will have a Moxie Bets March Madness bracket tournament challenge that we will
Ooh.
invite our listeners and fans in on as well to play you, me, and Danny. And the winner will get a guest spot here on Moxie Bets, but we will have a promo and everything for that later. But as we get into bracketology here and kind of how you're building this, I just want to pick your brain on some trends about March Madness and see what you think about this. And this is from covers.com. Their number 1 trend, they said, is coaching and experience. Is this something that you really look at like an Izzo or like it used to be a Coach K? Is this something that you really use? Is coaching a big deal when betting on March Madness and building these brackets?
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be. Like I said last week, it's not by coincidence that we see Tom Izzo, Coach K when he was coaching, constantly in the Final Four or the Elite Eight. Coaching absolutely matters, especially these are kids. Like we can't forget, these are
Yeah.
still 18, 19-year-old kids at the end of the day. And
Except I'm going to stop you right there, though, because except with the COVID year, we've got some 25-year-olds and 26-year-olds this year. But yes, I would agree with you normally. We got
it's
some
like
grown men.
it's like Stetson Bennett, right? Remember that? He was like,
Yes.
I think he's older than
Drew
Lamar
Timmy.
Jackson.
Yes, Drew Timme's 25 years old. And then also, Stuckey told me that Drake is one of his sleeper teams because they've got 3 players who are 25 or 2 that are 25 and one who's actually 26 years old. Grown men going against teenagers. But I digress. Keep going.
Yeah, yeah. But no, coaching and even player experience absolutely matters. Another one I
Yeah.
said last week, I think guard play. Strong guard play
Yes.
is so important. You know, just watching the first few rounds of these conference tournaments, you can already see how in late game situation when the pressure is ratcheted up and teams start pressing and they need these quick turnovers and they're fouling and the one and ones in play, you need good guards that can handle the ball, not turn it over, and drill free throws at the late game, end of game situation. So, yeah, strong guards is what I look for. That's why I like a team like Texas. They have 3 guards that can take over at any given time and are all very good on ball defenders. That's why I like a team like a Texas to make a deep run in the March Madness tournament.
Okay, it's going against Stuckey and his TCU, but I like it. How do you feel about adjusted defensive efficiency, which is basically the points allowed per 100 possessions multiplied by the national average defensive efficiency divided by the opponent's offensive efficiency? Since 2012 in the NCAA tournament, only 3 Final Four teams have ranked outside the top 40 in adjusted defensive efficiency that season. There was Kansas in 2018, UCLA in 2021, and Duke in 2022. Do you look at the adjusted defensive efficiency as well?
You have to. What is the
Yeah.
old saying, Katie? Defense wins championships,
Yes.
right?
Offense sells tickets, defense sells champions or wins championships. I,
It,
I butchered that, but we understand what I meant.
Exactly. And especially just the layout of the March Madness tournament. You play so many games in such a short span of time. You can't play a perfect basketball game every night. There's more than
Yeah.
likely, if you go on to win the national championship, you're probably going to have a bad shooting night where you're going to have to really buckle down and defend on the other end to get a win. So yeah, you need a team that can, say, hey, we don't have our best today, but we can still lock down on the other end and we're going to get this win because we're still better than that other team. So yeah, of course, you look at teams like Houston, Kansas, right? I think Kansas is top. Alabama's number
Mhm.
2 in adjusted defensive efficiency. There's a reason why, the top 5, top 10 teams are usually top 10 in adjusted defensive efficiency because they have the better players and they play really good defense. So yeah, you have to look at those things. And if you're listening and you don't know where to find these things, hop on kenpom.com. He's,
Mm,
if you're betting on college basketball, you have to be very familiar with
yeah.
KenPom because those numbers, like Katie just said, what was it? 3 teams have won the national championship that were not inside the top 40.
Yeah. 4, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that alone tells you right there that it matters.
Yeah. Oh no, 3. Yeah, you're right. Only 3 Final Four teams. You're correct on that. Now let's talk about bracket busters, right? Because there's going to be some. You got to factor in some upsets, and one of the most popular upsets is this number 5 seed versus the number 12 seed. Since 2012, the number 5 seeds are 21-19 straight up versus the number 12 seeds, and 15-24-1 against the spread in those opening round matchups. So when you're building out your bracket, Kenny, are you paying a little bit more close attention to the 5 and 12 seed in the first round and figuring out which one's going to be the upset?
Definitely. Like I said, when you're building the bracket, you always want to include at least one 5-12 upset. Like I said, I
Mhm.
like to put 1 or 2. I always build 2 brackets. That's another thing I recommend people do. Build out 2 brackets. One that maybe you follow a little bit more strategically, looking at teams that are better at adjusted defensive efficiency to advance here and, kind of go by that. And then do another bracket that you're kind of going with your gut and you're having fun with, like
Yeah.
everyone usually picks a team that they think is going to make a crazy run or a deep run, and maybe they don't. But still, you got to have fun with this at the end of the day. This is gambling. Like, we're still here to have fun. Obviously, we want to make
Yeah.
money, but unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way. So definitely, have fun when you're doing this.
Exactly, and that's the thing, and it always seems to be first of all, when you're betting on actual games, be a little bit more serious about it. When you're building your bracket, I mean, there's so many variables that can happen that, yeah, you gotta have a little fun in it, and, of course, we're in these bracket challenges that have money included in it, but for the most part, I do it with my family, I do it with work, we're gonna have one here on Moxie Bets, And it's always my cousins that don't watch sports, don't care about sports, and pick based on uniform color or whatever that end up winning our family bracket challenge every single year. So I agree with you. Make sure you have fun with it. Sometimes you can get too cute. You could try to outsmart yourself, and that ends up blowing up. So definitely agree with you on that one. Anything else you feel like the people should know? Of course, we're going to be talking about March Madness the entire month long, but anything else that you think is important for people when they're building these brackets or just betting on college in general?
No, I mean, I think just betting in general, one thing to do is don't go so crazy like in the first round. I see a lot of times, like
Mm,
even my clients, right? Like March Madness is a long. It's not long, but there's a lot of games that take place in a short window. A lot of times, people just get too excited, and the first day, second day in, they've already blown their whole bankroll.
right.
Those early games
Yes.
are usually where it's a little more chaotic, so a little tougher to
Hmm.
pinpoint certain an edge in certain games. So I like to say, like, don't go crazy on the first few days. Like, let a few games play out, see how things are going, and kind of get a feel for it, and then kind of jump in and make your decisions. And that's if you're trying to like really be serious and make money. If you're just trying to have fun and you want to throw a couple bucks on it and watch the game with your boys, or whatever it is, yeah, go nuts. But if you're trying to be disciplined and really trying to profit at the end of this whole ordeal, I would say,
Yeah.
don't go super crazy early on.
That's honestly, Kenny, that is, it's such a good thing because we say that at the beginning of the season, right? Because you're still trying to figure out, because a lot of these teams haven't played each other, all season long. So you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. So yeah, take it easy, people, bet on smaller amounts. Maybe don't blow your bankroll. I think that's some really, really good advice. Thank you, Kenny. But now it is time to move on to Mox Locks. Any sport for today or the weekend. We already know I'm going to go NBA with this one. So I will start us off for my first Mox lock. I'm taking Fred Van Fleet from Toronto, under 24.5 points and rebounds. So Fred's been a stud this year for Toronto, but he's been struggling as of late. He shot only 33% from the field in his last game. He's averaging around 20 combined points per game and rebounds per game in his last 10. Now he's been killing it with assists. He's had at least 9 assists in 5 of the last 6 contests. But I looked at that. His prop is 7.5. The over is juiced to -154. So I'm going to stay off of that one and instead look to lock in this under for his points and rebounds, because he's actually had under 24 combined points for rebounds and combined rebounds and points in 8 of the last 10 games. So I'm looking at Fred Van Fleet under tonight.
I'm going to
What's your
ride
first
that
lock?
with you. One, you've been crushing the NBA, and then two, obviously, Fred Van Fleet's been in the media. He was just criticizing the refs, got fined. I think he comes back and gets his
Yep.
money back.
And the refs are going to be on him. The
Yeah,
refs are going to be on him.
yeah. He may not get the foul calls going his way, but hopefully he comes
Yeah.
out hot.
Mhm.
I'm looking at Texas, so I'm gonna go with college basketball. I'm gonna stick with what I do. I'm looking at Texas on the money line tonight. You can find them; they're around -135, -140 on Caesar Sportsbook. I just think this is a game where a lot of people, the public perception is going to look at TCU and Texas just played recently. TCU beat them. They're kind of going to look at this. Oh, TCU's getting points here, but don't buy into that. Texas is a very, very, very strong team. There's a lot on the line here. If they win this tournament, they could potentially maybe lock up a number 1 seed. So yeah, I like
Mm.
Texas to come out tonight, play a very good game. They looked great yesterday, and I think they'll handle TCU with ease.
Okay. I'm so excited. I got no dog in this fight, but you and stuck here on the opposite side of this. I'm interested to see who comes out victorious here. Again, going back to the NBA, it's just fun for me to watch. I'm taking the Nets and the Timberwolves over 227. Now, this line actually opened up higher than this at 230, and everybody's been betting the under on this one. So it's actually pushed down to 227. Yet I'm still going to take this over. So there's no Carl Anthony Towns for Minneapolis tonight. That's huge. It's a huge loss for their interior defense. And the Nets are interesting because they actually still hit the over last night versus the Bucks, even without Claxton, Dinwiddie, Johnson, Royce O'Neal. And they were up against a very good defense with Milwaukee. So to me, this last game was a trackmate too, 125 to 136. I kind of feel like it's a good spot to fade the public here and take this over 227.
So you're going with the over?
I'm going with the over.
Yeah.
The consensus online is the under, and it's actually been bet down from 230 down to 227. But I like the over in this one. You got some people coming back from the Nets that are rested that didn't play in the last game. You got some problems on defense for Minnesota with Carl Anthony Towns out. And to me, again, the last time it was a track meet, 136 to 125. Let's go over.
Yeah, and I feel like since we did the show a couple weeks ago where we talked about the most profitable under teams, and the Nets were one of them, it's been the complete opposite. Like I've bet a few Nets unders, and they just smoked them.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
they've been
and
playing
it's
no
and it's
defense.
interesting, their bench, they're listen, they don't have top guys like they had, right? But their top guys aren't the ones scoring all the points. It's been the bench. And so it's been kind of interesting to see this like new look Nets. But yeah, I would agree with you. Things have changed in Brooklyn.
Did you see? So obviously, Michael Bridges has been going off. He's been scoring close to 30 points a night now since he's been the main guy.
Yeah.
I forget what player it was, but he was talking, saying how almost any player in the league, if they are given that green light to just shoot, they will average
Yes.
30 points a night. Do you buy into that?
No, because then I think every player would be
Yeah,
shooting 30 points a
yeah,
night.
right.
Now, of course, I mean, well, but there's always that thing too, where it's like Steph Curry is out, or, some of the big shooters are out, or even like, let's say John Morant, right? Sometimes I think that the Grizzlies play better without John Morant. So when you do have a big star where it's just like pass them the ball, pass them the ball, pass them the ball, and maybe they're a little bit more of a ball hog, like you look at even a Luka or a Kyrie that aren't really passing the ball too much, they're taking the shots for themselves, then yes, I do think that there are some people that can show up and have bigger games because they're not used, one guy is kind of a little bit of a ball hog, maybe rightfully so, maybe not. But no, I don't think that every player in the NBA could average 30 a night. No.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, what? What is this guy saying?
Yeah.
My next Mox lock, we're gonna stick with college. I'm going Vanderbilt. I'm fading my Kentucky Wildcats. Vanderbilt's one of those sneaky teams. They've been playing very good basketball as of late down the stretch. And they historically play Kentucky well all the time. They have big guys on the inside that can match up with Oscar Shibwe and slow him down. So I think Vanderbilt, right now they're getting 7.5 points. I think that's way too many points. I don't think they win outright, but I think they will cover the 7.
Take the dogs with Vandy. I love that. All right, Kenny, thank you so much. It's always so great to have you on the show every single Friday. This has been Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. Don't forget to follow us on social at Moxie Bets, and we will have more information about our bracket challenge next week.